Alright, I am back once again with another video. Sorry about not making a video yesterday. I wasn't really feeling too well, but I'm back again with another video. And this video is once again in Age of History 2. It's been a little bit. And this video is on a alternative history scenario that I've created, and I call it the Great Collapse. Now, the game here in the background is not really important. What is important, though, is the map, which is what is the map that I've designed for this alternative history scenario. Now, a few things before I start explaining the details of this scenario, which I'm very proud of. Uh, this is different from our timeline. This is an alternative history scenario. None of this is real. This is alternative history and is purely for fun. And you might not really, if you're not really into history that much, you might not understand too much of this. So if you're not really into history, this video is not really for you. But stick around if you want, because I don't know, I think this is pretty interesting. But yeah. Also, this video is not made to offend anyone and is purely made for fun. But without further ado, let's begin. Alright, so the point of divergence for this alternative history is in 1917. For pretty much most of human history, it plays out the same. But in 1917, in the midst of the Great War, huge rebellions sweep over Europe, and a widespread revolt protesting the Great War sweeps Europe. This pretty much takes hold in the colonies as well, and these revolts get so bad that the armies fighting in France and the Eastern Front and the Western Front just completely stop. And the Western Front armies, many abandon Germany, some return, although it's very treacherous, and many just get lost in Russia. And in the Eastern Front, the German army just evacuates France, and pretty much most of the officers are killed, since the armies just wouldn't listen to them anymore. Uh, Shortly after this, France collapsed in the Civil War, and the communists took Paris and pretty much most of the country. And France, after this, falls in the civil war between the old republic and a monarchist faction, which takes control in the south. Germany, after after the war, uh, flees through Belgium and returns to mainland Germany. And Germany would collapse into civil war, although the imperial army, which had fled from France, restores order, and the German Empire is restored. The Kaiser sticks around and continues to hold Germany up, although Germany collapses pretty badly. After the short civil war, Bavaria, Württemberg, and Baden both declare independence, and also Augsburg. I think that's how you say it, Augsburg. That becomes independent too. Uh, Many Polish regions here in the east, such as Poznan, I think that's what this region is called, joins Poland, and Silesia becomes a joint German and Polish occupied region, although the Polish do not get the Polish corridor in this region, as the Germans defend it. Although after the Polish would seize Poznan, Poland and Germany would sign a truce and would jointly occupy Silesia. Uh, Germany, though, got off pretty easy in Europe from the Great Collapse. France, after this, would go into civil war, and the state of Brittany would declare independence. Spain probably got it the worst out of all these countries. And, well, I didn't. If I said the worst, if I said Germany got it the worst, they actually got it pretty good. I think I said the best, though. They probably did get the best. But, Spain probably gets it the worst out of this, as they lose their most economical, well, I don't even know how to say that. They lose their most wealthy province, Catalonia, and it becomes independent as a communist state. The Basque country also becomes independent, and they take a little bit of France as well. Galicia, and not the Galicia over here, becomes independent. And Spain is thrusted into a civil war between the monarchy and a communist state. Portugal also goes into civil war between the monarchy and a republic, and Spain keeps hold of their territories here, although they massacre many tribes in the region that try to take over, especially in the desert territories here in southern Morocco. They also keep hold here in this colony after several massacres, and also the German Empire also keeps hold of their colonies uh, after committing several genocides against the natives and a tragic loss of life for the restoration and order of the German colonies. Uh, Tanzania, though, was lost to the native nations, and the Zanzibar Sultanate is restored. Back to Europe, though, Spain is thrusted into a civil war. Italy also goes into a three-way civil war, or uh, yeah, they go into civil war as well between a communist faction in the north and the old monarchist faction in the south. Mussolini seizes control of most of mainland Italy and installs a fascist dictatorship. And Venice also just becomes independent and doesn't go in the civil war. Uh, Italy's colonies, though, are lost. Uh, Tribes and other nations here in Libya take over. Uh, the Italian colonies in East Africa also become independent. And, oh yeah, France's colonial empire after the war would be denounced by the French Commune and would basically be torn apart by native tribes and states wishing to become independent. And the nations that we know in Africa today would not come into existence since they would not be released by Europeans and native tribes would become the independent and ruling nations. Spain, though, although a few colonies would persist, mainly colonial nations that wanted to preserve their colonies, although many would not survive. The British, though, actually, wait. Now it's time for the British. The British would probably, they would get hit pretty hard by the war, by the Great Collapse, but not too bad. They would keep a few colonies, here and there. Uh, they would keep a few territories in Africa. They would maintain the Union of South Africa as a subject. Uh, they took a few islands from France here in the Caribbean, since France's colonial empire fell apart. Uh, Canada also loses Quebec and becomes a dominion of the British after the war, and the British take these territories here. Uh, Quebec becomes independent from Canada. Oh yeah, the British also keep some of the British Raj. The British Raj, I can't speak. Although northern India pretty much becomes independent. Pakistan does not come into existence, though, as the Sindhu kingdom takes control of pretty much the regions of modern-day Pakistan. And a new Indian state takes control of northern India. A bunch of smaller Indian kingdoms here declare independent and form sort of a buffer between the British Raj and India, since, they both hate each other. Although that wouldn't be why they formed. They just formed because they're kingdoms, and they did not wish to join the Raj or the new Indian state. In the east, Australia and New Zealand remain, although North New Zealand is claimed by New Zealand natives. And the British also take some French islands here, since the French colonial empire falls apart. South America remains pretty much mostly the same, except for Brazil. Oh, wait, hold up. Zoom over here. Brazil annexing French Guiana, and Suriname, and the few European colonies here becoming independent. Also, Argentina takes the Falklands, and they get revenge for 1980 or whatever year they went to war for that. Although they didn't really get revenge, they just took the island since it's way before that. South America, though, for the most part, remains pretty much the same, like always. Not much change in Central America, except for the Republic of the Yucatan becoming independent with American support. Also, Jamaica becomes independent, and those are pretty much all of the changes here in South America and the Caribbean. Africa becomes a mess of tribes and a few remaining colonies. The Portuguese, despite going into a civil war, maintained rule over their colonies after many, many bloody genocides and a tragic loss of life for both sides. It would be truly a lot of bloodshed for the remaining colonies, and it might not have even been worth it to keep them, although sadly these dying colonial empires would continue and persist. China remains in a state of civil war, The Qing actually make a comeback and seize Manchuria again, and they take the capital Beijing, although the Republic of China and the Communist state here continue battling it out and remain as factions in the Civil War. Also, the German colony here of Shandong becomes independent, and China remains in civil war. The Soviet Union wins the Civil War against the monarchists, although at a very, very bloody price. The Russian Civil War was devastating as it was in our timeline, but in this one, it's 10 times worse. And the USSR is left devastated after the war, and they do not really have much power left, or any at all, and are in a state of recovery after the Civil War, and they aren't really able to seize the territories that broke off from them. So Central Asia here basically does its own thing, and these nations here become independent. Uh, I don't even know how to say that. Buryatia? I don't even know. That becomes independent. Ukraine becomes independent. Belarus and Karelia considers joining Finland because of them needing protection against the Soviet Union. This little tiny nation here, Pskov, becomes independent, and Poland doesn't really fight the USSR in this timeline, so they don't have to defend Warsaw from them, but they do still take the east here. They don't, though, take these territories from Lithuania, and they allow them to keep Vilnius and Verina. I think that's what that's called. A potential union between Poland and Lithuania could potentially happen, as both sides do sort of want protection from the still powerful German Empire. Uh, the United Baltic Duchy remains and breaks off from uh, the German boot or whatever. I think all of these territories would be puppets. I think they were puppets for a brief time during World War One, and they pretty much just become all independent since the German Empire isn't able to hold their rule in these territories. So they become independent. Finland emerges from the Russian Empire and supports a unification between them and Karelia. The Nordics here remain pretty much mostly the same. Denmark doesn't really have any changes to it. The Netherlands, uh, they don't really get it too bad from the Great Collapse, although they do suffer some losses in the east to the Dutch East Indies. Several regions become independent, like in Borneo and in Sumatra, although Java remains pretty much under Dutch control. And the Dutch lose a bit of New Guinea here to the, what's this called? The Sultanate of Ternate, I think that's what that's called. Uh, yeah, they don't really have too many issues, although they just lose a bit of their colonies. Uh, Belgium becomes divided by, it gets divided into Wallonia and Flanders. Flanders becomes a kingdom, while Wallonia becomes communist with the aid of France. The United Kingdom remains to hold a few of their colonies, although they lose Scotland and Ireland. Uh, what else? The United States remains. The United States does not join World War One, so they don't really suffer from the Great Collapse, and they still get rich off of selling weapons to the Allies, and they are in a fantastic position in the world right now, and mass immigrations from Europe go to the USA. Uh, Japan also doesn't really see the effects of the Great Collapse, even though they were sort of involved in the First World War, and they still get all the German colonies and islands here. And they are in fantastic shape, and would probably be invading Manchuria soon, and other Chinese territories, which would be very bad for China. But yeah, Japan doesn't really suffer the effects from the Great Collapse too much. Colonies here in Southeast Asia don't really see too many. The Europeans are pushed out, and Vietnam is divided in two, just like in our timeline. Although both states don't really fight each other, since they're both sort of equal with each other militarily, and they both sort of sit in a standoff like North Korea and South Korea at this time, although they probably would be going to war soon. Cambodia becomes independent and declares neutrality in Southeast Asia. The Kanbong dynasty, I think that's what that's called, takes over Myanmar, or Burma, whatever this is called. And, the British and the Portuguese both maintain hold of these territories here. Hong Kong and Macau are still under colonial rule since China is in civil war, and they aren't really able to take them back. And the Middle East, still a very complicated region, sees the Persian Empire. Wait, was Persia a monarchy during World War One? I don't know, but the Persian Empire, or sort of the Neo-Persian Empire, is declared, sort of wanting to restore the old Persian Empire from back in the ancient days, and it overthrows what was in charge of Persia before. I didn't really know what it was, but a sort of Neo-Persian Empire declares itself, and it doesn't really go off very well with the people, and Persia sort of falls into turmoil a little bit when it's declared. Not into a civil war, but things just don't really kick off for the state very well. And Balochistan becomes independent after the British Raj collapses, and they take a little bit of territory here. Afghanistan remains a monarchy after the collapse of the Raj, and they do pretty alright in this timeline. Central Asia basically does its own thing since Russia collapsed and isn't really doing very well. The Ottoman Empire barely holds on after the First World War, and the Arab Revolt wreaks havoc over the Ottomans' old territories here. And the Ottomans just barely hold on. And they sort of look to reclaim their Arab territories in the south and restore their rule over these Arabian territories and over North Africa, since it's pretty much free game since all the colonial empires collapsed. The British take control of the not the British, the Egypt takes control of the Suez Canal, although they don't really maintain control over Sudan as it becomes independent. And what is this called? The Nuba peoples take control over southern Sudan. And Ethiopia seizes Djibouti, I think that's what this is called, from the French. And they also take a little bit of Kenya here from the old British colony. And Africa pretty much becomes a war zone between the new Arab tribe nations that declared their independence and fought off the European colonializers, or colonizers, I mean. And only a few colonies would remain from when the Europeans would get pushed out. The Balkans would still be a very complex region. The British would take northern Epirus, I think that's what this is called, from Albania, since it is pretty much ethnically Greek. The Balkans don't really see too much change after the First World War. They sort of shrug it off, except for the collapse of the Austrian Empire. The collapse leads to Czechoslovakia being declared independent. Hungary becomes independent, as does Croatia and Bosnia. And Serbia also takes a little bit of territory here. Romania takes control of Transylvania, and Hungary tries to preserve Greater Hungary, although they sort of fail, They do keep some territories, as they hold northern Transylvania and some regions of Czechoslovakia. And this region here has a very long name. I don't know if I forgot what it's called, but the name is sort of really weird. They just keep this northern region here since it's pretty much ethnically Hungarian. And Greater Hungary is sadly lost, although they do keep a little bit of it. Romania takes some of, they take all of Bessarabia and unite with that. And the Balkans sort of doesn't see too much change after the First World War. The Greeks managed to push out the Bulgarians, as do the Serbians, and they take Bulgarian sea access, although Romania doesn't really do much with northern Dobruja, as the Bulgarians defend it ruthlessly and refuse to give it to them. Plus, they were also fighting the Hungarians, so the Bulgarians get to keep, I think this is called northern or southern Dobruja. It's one of those. I think it's southern Dobruja, I think. But yeah, they keep that territory after defending it from the Romanians. Bosnia becomes independent, although the Serbians would soon go to war with them to take it over. Croatia becomes independent after successfully fighting off the Hungarians. And Austria loses its entire empire, although still remains an empire, with the Habsburgs in charge. I don't know who this guy is. I'm not even going to try to say that, but whoever he is, I don't even know who he is. Maybe he's a Habsburg, or maybe he's a Habsburg king or something, I don't know. But the Habsburgs remain in control of Austria, and would soon be taking over Venice and trying to restore their rule over their old empire. The Polish restored their homeland, or what they think is their homeland, and they take this eastern territory here. They fight off the Germans, and Europe looks like this. It is in a very, very rough state, and pretty much all economies in the world are devastated. And South America doesn't change very much. Oh, and Quebec, I think I mentioned this before, it becomes independent. Uh, and yeah, pretty much all major nations involved in World War One are affected by this, except for Japan. And the U.S. in this timeline does not get involved in World War One. And the Middle East never gets really taken over, or Arabia is never really conquered by Saudi Arabia, so Arabia remains divided. And all British colonies in Arabia are pushed out by the Arab Revolt, which sort of goes. It's sort of many of the states with Arab territories lose control, and they are pushed out by uh, the Arab Revolt, and many states are declared, and Arabia becomes fractured. And yeah, I pretty much think that's all there is for this scenario. I thought of all this myself, and I took heavy inspiration from Supremacy 1914, which had a map sort of similar to this. I made a few changes. Uh, Tell me what you think of this scenario or alternative history thing that I've made in the comments below. If you want me to make any changes or think any border suggestions or map suggestions, please let me know in the comments. Now, this is a map and an actual playable game that I made in, what's this thing? I just forgot the name of the game that I'm playing. Age of History 2, I mean. Oh yeah, Germany sort of, with World War One, it sort of just ends after the Great Revolt, and Germany keeps Alsace-Lorraine and their colonies, and sort of a peace treaty is never really signed. The Great War just ends, and yeah, that's what happens with the Great War. But this is an actual playable thing that I've made here, and you probably don't have it because I don't really know how to turn this into a mod. Like, I have no idea how to do that. And if you want this as a mod and don't want to have to make it yourself in the, you know, editor thing, if you have this game, join the Discord server and we can maybe make this a mod that you can just download and add to your game. And also, I'm playing this right now, as you can see, so, yeah. This is, maybe join the Discord, link in the description, if you want to help make this an actual mod that you can download. And as you can see, you can literally play this and see how the scenario turns out. Although, I don't know if I'm going to add any more lore to this. But so far, this has been the Great Collapse lore. I hope you enjoyed this alternative history scenario thing that I've made. And this video is getting kind of long now, so I should probably be cutting this. But yeah, if you want to help make this a mod, join the description. Or, I mean, join the Discord server, link in the description. And, yeah, I might make more alternative history scenarios. Hopefully this could maybe get as big as the Kaiserreich lore. Or what if Germany won World War II? Or other alternative history things that are pretty popular within that community. But yeah, this is the Great Collapse lore. I took heavy inspiration from Supremacy 1914 and Kaiserreich and other alternative history scenarios. And this is completely different from our timeline. And it is not made to offend anyone. This was made completely for fun. But yeah, I'm going to be cutting this video here, broskies. I hope you found this interesting. Let me know in the comments if you want me to change anything. Or your thoughts on this epic scenario or whatever. And yeah, I will see you in the next video. Alright, bye.